like appreciative inquiry and a lot of other approaches, we are competency-based. So we start out looking at what a system, what an organization, what a leadership team does well. Our philosophy is that we do this for two reasons. We believe that when you do something well, it becomes habitual. If I can be trivial. When you learn to brush your teeth, I don't know if you can remember when you were a little girl, it was like a big task, but and now it's automatic and you do it every day. And people stop appreciating what they do well. So when you know what you do well, it's a beginning, and it also opens you up. So when you know that people are looking at you and looking at you with appreciative lens, appreciative eyes, focusing on what they like about you, what they see are your skills, what they see are is your competence, then you become open for influence, for me to impact you. Your body opens up and your awareness opens up. So that's the first step. Now, whenever you're competent at something, you're less competent at other things. Now, we say in our model there's something called no free lunch, that for everything you do well, you pay a price. And we began to notice the price they paid is that they had to make a decision whether to move forward with a big initiative. But they couldn't make a decision because every time they were moving towards a decision, if somebody went like this, the whole process would stop. And they'd say, well, what's going on with you? And the person would say, well, I'm not so sure we should do this. And they say, well, tell me more. So they kept getting diverted. Okay. To use other language, we would call this a deflective system. To use other language, we'd say they spent a lot of time in awareness. Okay. But every time they moved towards action, where they had to make a decision, they go back to the awareness. So the price they paid out of being so inclusive, so aware of each other, is they didn't move towards a decision. So the second intervention, which is more of a training model, is that we then went in and we said, do you know that this is what happens? That what you really do well is you are aware of each other. You make sure that everybody's 100% on board before you take a step. The price you pay is every time you begin to take a big step, you fall back. And they said, oh yeah. And they began to move towards a decision. They integrated the feedback. And they almost got there, and then they would back off again. They got a little bit closer. And then the third step is what we call experiment. We used to call it experiment, but now we say more like it's try this, because experiment has a bad connotation. Like a subject and an object, and we're going to experiment on you. And it's like, what's the next step that can move them into action? Okay? So he said, when people put out ideas, they put them out like this, because they're all checking it out. And when you move towards action, you have to narrow your possibilities.
Why has it become so popular, and why do more and more, not only psychologists, but OD consultants use the Gestalt approach?
Well, I always believe it should be more popular. To call it an approach is true, but for me it's a way of life. It's not just an approach to OD, it's an approach to how I treat people. I split my time between being an organizational consultant and a psychotherapist, so I use it in psychotherapy. I've used it to raise my kids. So it's got some very, very deep values to it. And I think people are yearning for values. It's always interesting to meet people with different approaches. I think that's what the philosophy has gotten inside of me. I don't want us to be too similar, so I do look for differences. But if we're too similar, then there's something wrong. In Gestalt language, we call it confluence or enmeshment. Mm-hmm. So that if there's too much similarity, you lose your liveliness. So there's a right balance between connectedness and scratchiness. And of course, that's different in every organization.
And what is the importance or the value of this OD World Summit here in Budapest, according to your view?
Oh, I think it's bringing people together from all over the world. For me, it's been a joy. I'm making new friends. I'm bumping into people I haven't seen for years. I just went to a presentation before I came up here. We did some work in South Africa with some friends of ours about 4 or 5 years ago. I think I made 3 or 4 trips down there. And one of the men I hadn't seen in the 3 or 4 years, and I'm just coming from their presentation, and they're presenting all the results of what we were just a small part of it, of what they did in government. And it was very, very touching because they do such important work. So it's been fun on many, many levels.